Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 76 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits. But I've found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. As you might have already figured out if you read the name of this episode, we're going to be taking a close look at the first two episodes of the new MCU show on Disney+. While the show is airing, Welcome to Geektown will be going weekly in order to follow all of the twists and turns of this unique television program. Also, in order to bring in an outsider's perspective, I'll be talking to my good friend Joel L., who I'll introduce in just a moment. But before we get started, there are big spoiler warnings in effect. In addition to discussing the details of the episodes that have aired, Joel and I will be speculating based on the quick shots we've seen in various promos, as well as bringing in information from the little snippets that have come out in interviews, and of course, I will be theorizing using my knowledge of the comics and how they may inspire how the mystery of the show unfolds. If you're the type to avoid any and all possible spoilers, these next few episodes may not be for you. But once you've watched the show in its entirety, you'll have the pleasure of listening to all of these episodes in one big chunk and hear exactly how wrong Joel and I got it. Now, as this podcast is covering 2 episodes of the show and also has a bunch of backstory from the comics to cover for the main characters, this is an extra long episode, so let's get started, shall we? Welcome everyone, we're doing a very special episode today. Instead of just me talking by myself, I'm going to be talking with a very good friend of mine and frequent question asker on the podcast, Joel L. Hello, Joel.
How's it going, everybody? I gotta say, Kurt, when you started off by saying we have a very special episode this week, I thought you were going to go into an after-school special.
Hello, my name is Kurt. And I'm a comic-holic.
Yeah, that's not news to anybody.
No, it's really not. So, Joel, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you bring to the proceedings?
I bring a wide open blank slate. I am a geek in other ways than Kurt is. I've been involved with various things throughout the years, and I'm heavily into, like, for example, contemporary a cappella and barbershop. But there's some crossover. We've been very good friends for a very long time. And
over 20 years.
You had to give it a number. Man. Yes, we've been friends for a very long time. And when we met, there was probably more direct carryover in our geekiness. We were both into anime and Akira and Ranma 1/2 and things like that at the time. Although it actually probably took me 15 years after knowing you to actually read all of Ranma 1/2. I've never been that into comics on the page. I've enjoyed them, and I do enjoy finding background on characters that I like and saying, oh, let's check out this storyline, and I'll find a way to read that storyline. But I've never been a comic collector, although I did grab all of Akira at one point.
Well, I have all of Akira, but in graphic novel, in the big Dark Horse phone book.
Same.
Yeah. So that's only 6 volumes. It's just they're giant volumes.
I apologize. I misunderstood. I have like 35 things.
Oh, no. I have 6.
Those are big.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then different. But
for the listeners, I'm right next to my library shelf. So I just actually pulled Akira off the shelf real quick and showed him.
So anyway, I thoroughly enjoy comic related stuff. I can remember the very first movie that I actively avoided movie trailers for. Like, I was in a movie theater for a different movie, and I saw that the trailer was coming on, and I closed my eyes and plugged my ears. The first movie I avoided any spoilers on was the first Tim Burton Batman. So I've always loved comic characters and storylines, but the actual stuff on the page and the years and years and decades of lore surrounding them are way beyond my scope. So what I bring to the podcast is an enjoyment of these things without a huge amount of knowledge, and therefore I can ask questions that lay people might know because I am one.
All right. And what about the Marvel Universe, the MCU?
Well, I've seen every movie. I have watched all of the shows that have been out so far, including all of the Netflix shows, and I sought out all of the Marvel one-shots, and I'm a little bit obsessed. But again, not so much that when Wanda first showed up, for example, since that's the topic today, that I went and sought out all of the Scarlet Witch stuff. I just kind of enjoyed her for the character that she is in the films and now the Disney Plus show.
So when I first solicited for, well, let's be honest, I solicited for you to join the show. You brought up that there are so many of these shows coming up that I could basically turn Welcome to Geektown into this.
Especially now that we know that they're dripping them. I originally wasn't aware that was going to happen. I thought that when we're recording this, as of yesterday, we would have a season of WandaVision to watch. But no, this is going to go right up until the next show comes out. Yeah, no,
Disney Plus has been releasing all their shows weekly rather than making them bingeable.
Well, they're still bingeable. It's just you got to be more patient about it.
Yeah. But they want to stretch this out. They want people talking about this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And loyal listeners, that's what we're going to be doing. But I think that this show in particular is going to lend itself so much more to looking at it week by week than, say, something like Falcon and Winter Soldier is.
Well, because of the mystery aspect of it. Every time there's a new episode, there are new clues.
Right.
And we don't know where this is going.
Yeah. And I think, judging from the little bit I've seen so far, the little promos and stuff, I may want to do this again for Loki.
I'm not committing to anything at this point.
That's understandable. Thankfully, I do have a couple other people who volunteered on that post. So if you are not available, there will be at least someone for me to discuss the show with.
If nothing else, I think that if you put the post out specifically for Loki, there would be a lot of women volunteering to watch that show over and over.
That's probably true. And, some men.
Sure.
Not going to yuck anyone's yum. So let's get into WandaVision. Actually, before we get started on it, you emailed me a few questions.
I did.
Kind of to get me started. The first thing you wanted to know was if I've covered Wanda and Vision yet, and how well they line up with their comic counterparts. And I've talked about Wanda a little bit in relation to House of M.
Okay.
It's kind of her big defining story in the Marvel universe these days. Is she's the one who created that alternate universe where Magneto was in charge and mutants were the majority rather than the minority. And she was the powerless daughter of Magneto in that world. Only a few people remembered the real world, and they eventually confronted her, and she was forced to change things back. But when she did change things back, she said no more mutants when she did it, and a whole bunch of mutants woke up with their powers gone.
Neat.
Yeah, it was kind of a soft reset on the X-Men world. And so how they line up with their comic counterparts is really interesting. So Vision's powers and everything are pretty much dead on. He can phase, he can turn himself incredibly dense, which makes him incredibly strong. He can fly, he can shoot beams out of the gem on his head. Origin is completely different. Well, not completely different, but very different. In both cases, he is basically a child of Ultron. In Age of Ultron, Ultron's making this new body for himself, and that's what Vision ends up being. But then it also ends up being an amalgamation of that body with Jarvis and some lightning from Thor, and powered by, of course, the Mind Stone. And so it's kind of this amalgamation of a bunch of Avengers and Avengers enemies together to make this one being. In the comics, he has no relation to the Infinity Stones at all. And same with Wanda. She is not powered by an Infinity Stone like she is in the MCU.
More specifically, the same
Same
Infinity Stone.
Yeah, which makes a real interesting connection for them in the MCU, but isn't at all part of their relationship in the regular comics. In the comics, Vision was created by Ultron. Importantly, Ultron was not created by Tony. Ultron was created by Hank Pym, aka the first Ant-Man, because as we all know, an expertise in biochemistry also makes you an expert in robotics and artificial intelligence.
Darn tootin'.
So Vision was created by Ultron to invade Avengers headquarters and defeat the Avengers. But he ended up turning against Ultron and joined the Avengers. And he and Scarlet Witch started their romance pretty early on in the comics. Vision's personality, instead of being based on Jarvis, Tony's AI, in the comics, Jarvis is Tony's butler. His mind, his personality is based on the memory engrams of Wonder Man, aka Simon Williams, who we have not seen in the MCU, except if you're one of the lucky people who saw his face on a poster in a cut scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Wow, that's a deep draw.
That's a really deep draw. And do you know who was the face of Simon Williams on those posters?
How would I know that? No, I don't.
Nathan Fillion.
What?
Yeah, because James Gunn and Nathan Fillion have that relationship. Nathan was in Slither that James Gunn directed, and they have been friends ever since. And so Nathan was a voice in both Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy, but has not been seen on screen in the MCU yet.
Oh, we need Nathan in the MCU.
Oh, tell me about it. And this would have been the perfect part for him too, because Simon Williams is basically a cheesy Hollywood actor who gets superpowers, and he's very much like Booster Gold in the DCU. in that a lot of his motivation is, I want to be famous,
Oh
as
my
well as
God.
being a hero.
It's so perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so Vision in the comics has this whole kind of extended family because of this. Hank Pym is kind of his grandfather. Ultron, whose mind was based on Hank Pym, is his father. Wonder Man is considered to be like a brother to him. But then Wonder Man also has his own brother in real, his own biological brother. And so there's this whole soap opera thing between them. And also Wanda has had a relationship with Simon, with Wonder Man, as well as having had a relationship with Vision. And I forgot to add that there's Wasp, who is the original Wasp is the wife of Hank Pym, and Ultron created Jocasta, a robot whose personality is based on the memory engrams of Wasp. So yeah, there's a whole
That makes sense.
there's
I
a
can see
whole
that.
family tree there that is very complicated.
Okay, so in the comics, Vision has an external web of complexity amalgamating,
Amalgamating.
thank you, all of these different characters. And in the MCU, it's all internal in his brain. He's kind of this combination of all of these other characters.
Yeah, that's a good summation there. And then Wanda, her backstory is even more complicated.
Of course it is.
So Wanda in the comics is the twin sister of Pietro. So it's Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, and Scarlet Witch. Same as the MCU. But in the comics, she was originally recruited by Magneto into the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. She and Pietro were mutants. And then later, we learn that they are Magneto's children.
Interesting. In the movies, they think of themselves in a lot of ways as being the children of Tony Stark.
Right. And of Strucker.
And of Strucker. That's a relationship I never want to see consummated.
So that's how things were for quite some time. But very recently, I think around 2012, 2013, there was a storyline called Axis, where due to some machinations of the Cosmic Cube, a bunch of heroes and villains who were in the same area at the same time had their alignments reversed. Good became evil, evil became good. And Scarlet Witch was one of those, as was Magneto. And so they are fighting against each other, and she casts a spell. I'll get into her powers more in a little bit here. But she casts a spell that basically takes out all of her family because she wants to get Pietro and Magneto in one stroke. Well, the spell takes out Pietro.
Oh.
So we learn that she is actually not the daughter of Magneto, and we eventually learn that she and Pietro are not actually mutants. They were genetically modified by the High Evolutionary, who is another long-standing Marvel villain, mostly villain, who is interested in evolution and kickstarting it and making it move faster to get us off the planet and, evolved as quickly as possible. Which
I imagine that he and Magneto team up quite a bit.
Except that he wants to evolve humanity, and Magneto feels that
Humanity is obsolete.
Yeah, there you go. So she and Pietro were raised by the High Evolutionary and his extended family, which we'll also get into with some Easter eggs in the show. And so her powers are, she is a chaos witch. Originally, she just had like these hex bolts that caused people bad luck when they hit them. So people would be running at her and she'd hit them with a hex bolt and they'd trip.
Or get a piano fall on them or something.
Yeah, weird little things like that. But she learned how to control her magic combined with her quote unquote mutant powers. And she is now a full on actual witch who casts spells and controls what's known as chaos magic. And so she has the ability to alter reality itself, which is where that whole House of M storyline comes in. And I think that kind of catches us up to where we are with the characters. And I think we can get jumping into the show itself.
Okay.
So, in general, what did you think of the show?
I loved it. I think that a lot of the shows that I have been enjoying lately have kind of a slow beginning. They're getting you into the world of the show over the course of an episode or two, and then diving into what the show's actually about. And this very much follows into that.
Yes.
There's a reasonable amount of mystery of what the heck is going on here. And I enjoy mysteries. What's that?
And we will talk about that.
Here's hoping. Because what the heck is going on here? But there's also hints and clues and things that are points of curiosity for people like me who aren't all that invested in the lore. Mm-hmm. And those same things are references for people like you who very much are.
Yeah.
And we can both enjoy it on different levels. It's cool.
On those different levels. Yeah, exactly. I'm loving it. I think this is going to be one of those shows that really rewards a rewatch after it's completed.
I agree. I think this is going to be very much oh, that's what they meant.
Yeah.
Oh, they were hinting at this way back in episode 1?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get this rolling. So in the first episode, we see a calendar. And I'm enough of a geek that I went and said, okay, what years does August 23rd land on a Wednesday? So judging from that and from kind of the feeling of the show, I think this takes place in 1961.
Okay.
Which is perfect because August of 1961 was the publishing date of the first issue of Fantastic Four, which started the Marvel Universe.
That is not an accident.
No, I don't think it is. And I think it's one of those lovely little details that they throw in for people like me who are that geeky, who want to find this out. So the first episode takes place in 1961. The second episode, I think, is probably more like 66 or so, because so the first episode has that Dick Van Dyke, Leave It to Beaver.
Dick Van Dyke is what I was thinking of with that one as well.
Yeah. And I mean, they make direct references to it. The font is similar in the opening credits. In the opening credits, Dick Van Dyke trips over an ottoman. In this one, he looks at the ottoman and says, no, let's just phase through it. So, yeah.
To be fair, if I remember correctly, he trips on the ottoman about half the time.
Okay. I didn't realize it was a...
I remember hearing somewhere one of those shows trips over the ottoman, except for when he doesn't. And they just kind of randomly shuffle which opening credits you get.
That's fun. I like that. And then the second episode is obviously Bewitched.
Oh, yes.
And I love how the second episode, the end of it, we go from black and white to color, because Bewitched was in black and white and then in color. It was one of those shows that actually shifted.
Made that transition. That was, yeah, it's a good little nod.
They have so many nods to classic television in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that makes this so rewatchable, is to catch those little moments and, in jokes and everything.
I agree. And I also, That element will be completely lost on a lot of the current audience. My son, for example, who is 10 years old, was kind of bored with both of these episodes. He kind of gets the sense that it's going somewhere, but at the same time, all of these references and all of these nods and all of this, it's in black and white, for crying out loud. The first episode was very clearly and intentionally in 4:3. All of these things are of a world that he has never, ever known.
That's true. I saw something interesting on Twitter, which is that for people probably a little older than your son, but teenagers and young adults these days, for them, that 50s and 60s TV show aesthetic is usually used in a something is wrong sort of way today. Like it's pleasant on the surface, but there's always something dark underneath. It's used for things like Black Mirror or Pleasantville, or
Pleasantville is what I was going to bring up. That I think that may have been kind of the moment that became trope level.
Yeah, true. I would agree with that. So it's interesting that this kind of continues that whole feeling, because we get some really dark moments in each of those episodes.
What do you mean? Nothing's wrong here. This is all perfectly normal.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
Stop it.
Stop it.
Oh, God, that creeped me out.
Yeah. Let's talk about that moment for a little bit, because they do so many things right then, where they change from the multi-camera format where everything's in wide shots to an extreme close-up on all those characters.
Kind of a psycho moment.
Yeah. And Wanda, just completely drops character and goes, "Help him, Vision."
What really struck me about that moment was how everyone was in a loop until Wanda broke it, including Vision.
Right. Yeah.
Which, the fact that we still don't know how Vision is alive yet made me wonder, is Vision alive? Or is this all in Wanda's head?
Well, that's going to be one of the big mysteries of the show. I have thoughts and I have theories based on things that have happened in the comics. And let's go back to some of those comics. So we're just kind of bouncing around here between episodes 1 and 2, since they both came out the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And they make some nice references to the Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries from 1985, which was 12 issues long and is the storyline where they try to go live in the suburbs together and have a normal life outside of superheroing. And that's the storyline where Wanda becomes pregnant with Vision's children.
Wait, what?
So yeah.
Which, again, that was my exact response in the episode too. Wait,
right.
What?
So yeah, they live in the suburbs together and she gets pregnant. One of the other storylines in there is dealing with two characters named Glamour and Illusion.
Interesting.
And they have kind of similar powers, actually, to Vision and Scarlet Witch, but with the sexes reversed. She can phase through things and also kind of puddle up. She can control her density, but in a different way than Vision does. Whereas he can manipulate matter that he touches to a certain extent. And they are another couple living in the same town that helps them out because they also don't want to be
outed.
Exactly. And they are using their powers in a magic show and pretending that it is just stage illusions. So that was a nice callback there, a nice little nod to that. So here's the thing with Wanda's children. And I think this is really going to be important for the show. especially after watching the second episode with the whole "for the children" thing.
Another creepy moment.
Another multiple creepy
theme.
moments. Yeah, kind of an ongoing theme throughout that whole second episode, leading up to her suddenly being 5-6 months pregnant. So in the comics, she gets pregnant, and it's with the help of Agatha Harkness, who is the woman who helped train Wanda in the use of her powers. And now take the name Agatha Harkness and take the very first syllable and take the very last syllable.
Oh, the neighbor, Agnes.
There you go.
Interesting.
And Agnes wears a brooch in the second episode that looks like 3 witches kind of around a cauldron or a tree or something that's hard to see at that size. But the ongoing theories that have been wandering around the comic sphere is that although it hasn't been explicitly stated, people are pretty sure that Agnes is Agatha Harkness. And so we'll get to see her introduction into the MCU as well.
Well, she is certainly the most prominent recurring character so far.
Yes, definitely. So Agatha helps Wanda kind of focus her powers in a way that allows her to become pregnant with Vision's children. And she gives birth to 2 children, twins named Billy and Tommy. We find out later their souls are pieces of the spirit or the being of Mephisto, who is one of the Marvel Universe's devil analogs. And because of that, she has to give them up in order to prevent Mephisto from coming into our world. And that tragedy of losing her children is so devastating to her that Agatha takes her memory of her having children away. And then she remembers later. And that's when her personality breaks down and she goes insane. And that's how the House of M storyline starts. So it'll be very interesting to see if we get Mephisto in this universe, in the MCU. Because I think that the For the Children and Agnes has been very forward about getting Wanda in the first episode. Oh, your seduction techniques. We want you to, you definitely want to hit that. And then in the second,
been a few characters who've been talking about why don't you have
would you have children? Yeah, true. Yeah, we get that from Mr. and Mrs. Hart in the first episode as well. And then in the second episode, the entire For the Children running theme there, I think someone is trying to get Wanda to have these children. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they follow that same plot from the comics and if it's going to be a devilish influence or if it's going to be a more positive influence or what exactly is happening there.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of mystery.
Yes, that's true. And we've just kind of scratched the surface with these first 2 episodes.
There was one other thing I wanted to
Sure.
ask about.
Yes.
Because MCU geek, but not comic book geek.
Yeah.
Asking comic book geek. There in episode 2, Wanda, who's doing this to you? Wanda, who's doing this? Who are Wanda's and potentially Vision's usual comic book villains? Or foils, I guess, if Wanda started off as a villain.
So I mentioned Wanda's whole mutant, not a mutant thing. That and the fact that she and Pietro joined the Avengers very early in their life. They were part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants for a few issues, and then they joined the Avengers very soon thereafter. And so they have been Avengers characters for quite some time. And so they haven't had much of solo titles that would get them their own focused villains, like Lex Luthor to Superman, or Cheetah to Wonder Woman, or Green Goblin to Spider-Man. They don't really have any specific foils except for Ultron and Grim Reaper and that whole kind of extended family that I talked about before. So they have Avengers villains, which are too numerous to mention, really.
Right.
Who is doing this to her is probably the big mystery. Most theories are she is doing this to herself. I want to put out a new theory that this is Agatha / Mephisto who are doing this to her, and that they are working to make her children in order to bring Mephisto into this world, like in the original series. Not the original, because there were actually 2 Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries. One was 4 issues and one was 12 issues. In the big 12-issue miniseries, that's the one where she gets pregnant and we find out all of that. So why don't we talk about some of the little Easter eggs that get thrown in?
Absolutely.
I'm guessing the answer is probably no, but did you notice any?
Well, obviously the commercials that were inside the show, talking about Stark Industries and talking about Stryker, and those things were pretty clear.
That's true.
There was one that I cheated a little bit in the second episode.
Yes.
Well, okay. I cheated a little bit, but at the same time, I'm the kind of person who, when I'm watching a show, if I recognize someone and I don't yet know why I know them, I will look them up. I go to IMDb a lot.
Yeah, and I do the same thing.
But in that same episode 2, the big dramatic, oh my God, there's something in color and it's out of this time zone and very anachronistic. There was a toy helicopter. The helicopter in that toy, A, it was in color.
Yes.
B, it was of a style that did not feel right for that time period.
Really? And I looked at it and thought it was totally of that period. And I'm sure you're working up to the logo on it.
I am.
The logo is of SWORD, which in the comics is the Sentient World Observation and Research Department.
I didn't look up what it stood for, but I knew you would know it.
And they are an offshoot of S.H.I.E.L.D. that is in charge of extraterrestrial invasion or influence, or, they're in charge of watching over the skies and making sure nothing gets in that's not supposed to.
So from a MCU standpoint, is it feasible that they happen to be a department that employs a whole bunch of Skrulls and perhaps Luke... I was about
Nick
to say
Fury?
Luke Cage. Nick Fury is in with them in outer space at the moment?
Potentially, but in the MCU, we know this only from little promos and posters and interviews and such, but they are the Sentient Weapon Observation and Research Division, or something along those lines. So they are not specifically talking about extraterrestrials, but more so sentient,
protecting us against Ultron,
and probably any evil superpowered beings. And so my thought was, because I looked at that toy copter and thought it looked exactly of the time. It looked very much like those metal kids' toys from the 50s and 60s. And so my assumption is it was a drone that entered the barrier between worlds and got translated as much as possible into something that fits in this world. But it wasn't complete, so it was in color rather than, because it wasn't controlled, basically. And so that's why it's in color as opposed to being in black and white like everything else around it.
Okay. I'm sure that you have more background thoughts about what's going on, and that influenced how you phrased what you just said.
True.
I will point out that there were a couple, prior to the big transition at the end of episode 2, there were a couple of other moments in color. The first one that I saw, at least, that was really clear to me was the red light on the toaster in episode 1's commercial.
Yeah.
Which also creepy.
Yes. Especially the woman just staring out at the screen at the end. And those advertisements, my feeling is, so far the big theory that everyone has been running with is that Wanda is in charge.
Okay.
Whether consciously or subconsciously, she is the one who kind of created this world and is the one that is influencing things, changing things. And I really kind of hope that's not the case, just because it's the obvious way that everyone has been going. And I think Marvel has been good every now and then at completely throwing you off the scent and saying, oh, you thought we were going this way? Watch us zag.
Watch us zag. That sounds like the name of an episode of something. I'm not sure.
But if she is the one controlling this, then those commercials are more of a subconscious thing, because she's not in those commercials. Those are what's displayed to the person at the end of the very first episode who sees the end credits of the television show and has that same Sword logo. So somebody from Sword is watching this show and they're seeing those commercials, but there's no sign that Wanda is seeing those commercials in any way.
Right.
And so I think those commercials are a combination of her subconscious, who is she the children of? She's the children of Tony Stark and Strucker. What are the first two commercials we see? Stark Industries and Strucker watches. And that red light with the beeping is very similar to the same kind of noise you get when the radio breaks in and someone is saying, Wanda, who's doing this to you? So I think those commercials are a combination of like her subconscious and possibly some sort of two-way communication.
Possibly. I would go a step further on that toaster, though. The red light beeping and it accelerating and getting faster, that reminded me more of an explosive device, like, for example, the one that was formative to her entire personality when we met her in Age of Ultron.
Good point. I hadn't thought of that. That is definitely another way to look at that.
Yeah, the one that has Stark Industries written
on
across
the
side, just like that toaster did.
Yeah. There's
I got
so
one!
much. There is just so much detail to this show, and so much that I'm gonna love going through this with you and talking out each episode and coming up with theories and discussing all of these references. Speaking of references, some more Easter eggs. So the opening credits in the second episode.
The Bewitched ones.
The cartoons, very much in that Bewitched style. So there is a literal blink and you'll miss it when Vision is phasing through from the second story to the first story of the house. You get to see in between the floors.
Okay.
And hidden away in that little space in between, if you pause at just the right moment, you have to be quick. There are bones, little cartoon bones, and a helmet. And that helmet is in the exact silhouette of Simon Williams' brother. So Wonder Man's brother is a villain known as the Grim Reaper, who has this helmet with like these two fins on each side that kind of go up in a little V shape, almost kind of similar to Galactus's helmet, really, but completely unrelated. There's that kind of referencing his whole extended family in the comics. And then in the supermarket, we get even more of those references in the posters on the back wall. There are Wonder Oats, which is a real, Wonder Man, Simon Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is Auntie A's kitty litter. Auntie A is Agatha Harkness, who has a cat familiar because Agatha is a witch who's been alive since the Salem days. So she is an old school witch with a cat familiar. And then the third one right in the middle is Bova Milk. And Bova, so I mentioned the High Evolutionary way back when.
Mm-hmm.
All the people in quotes, who help the High Evolutionary are genetically augmented animals who have been evolved to be humanoid and intelligent. And Bova is Wanda and Pietro's nursemaid. And she is a cow who has been put into human form. And so Bova Milk is
that. Wow.
Yeah, they really dug deep on some of these.
Well, they do that.
Yes. Yeah, those are the big Easter eggs that I caught in the show. Other than little things like Mr. Hart calls Vision, says, "Oh, you're really dense, aren't you?" And Vision's power is to be able to change his density. But those were the ones that directly called to the comics rather than to the MCU and the characters in general. Changing subjects, what were some of your favorite jokes in these two episodes? What were some of your favorite moments?
I thought it was hilarious, the whole concept of the second episode with the don't you think these people are going to know that we are trying to trick them and this is all fake? And no, in the real world, a magic show is all fake. And that's the fun. I thought that was hilarious, and I enjoyed how Wanda got them out of problem after problem.
Yeah.
The piano in particular, that was my grandmother's piano. That was just...
I love that guy. I love Jones. He's only had a few moments, but his deadpan delivery of everything is so perfect. With the string quartet in the first episode.
Yes.
I wore a turtleneck.
Yeah, he's great.
In the second episode, when Vision comes out on stage, I already said this on Twitter, but if anybody listening to this has not seen A Knight's Tale.
Oh, I hadn't put that together. That's awesome.
Paul Bettany plays Chaucer in that movie and is a kind of drunk, over-the-top, boisterous announcer, sort of, to the lead character.
Paul Bettany, who plays Vision.
Paul Bettany, who also plays Vision. And when Vision comes out and goes, "Hello, Westview," it was so right perfect. Out of Chaucer's. It was just, I got that flash of like, oh, we're getting that character for a little while. Okay. I laughed out loud through that whole performance.
I need
it
to
was
see that movie
great.
again.
It was great seeing Paul Bettany kind of flex those comedic muscles when he's usually plays Vision as so stoic and...
Well, from the very first moment we heard Jarvis, it was established what kind of character Paul Bettany was going to be in this universe.
True. Very dry, sarcastic wit, but very straight to the point. And seeing him basically gum drunk was was hilarious. And
it was beautiful.
Yeah. I can't wait till next episode, because reviewers, people who are actually in the entertainment industry as opposed to hangers on like ourselves, they got to see the first 3 episodes.
I had heard that, yes.
So I already know which show the next episode is homaging.
Okay.
So next episode, we're going to be in the Brady Bunch.
Ooh, fun.
Or at least that era. And so I think we're going to have a lot more physical humor from Paul and Elizabeth, or Vision and Wanda, to look forward to.
That will be a lot of fun.
So, do you have anything else specific you wanted to bring up?
Well, the one thing that, other than, the world, the
Right.
one thing that really made me cock my head and go, wait a minute. I remember Wanda having an accent. She's from
Sokovia.
From Sokovia. And boy, oh boy, does Wanda in the 50s or 60s have a Middle American accent.
Yeah, she has a Middle American accent, and he is a British person playing an American who is playing a British person.
Yes. That's the perfect analogy. Yes.
So this is one of those things that I've gotten from other people, but I probably would have come up with it on my own as well. And that is, she is trying to make this world like the TV shows she grew up on. And in that world, the perfect American family did not have anyone with a thick accent.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was thinking it was going to.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting when they return to the modern world, either in the show or if when they escape this universe that they're in, to see if her accent is going to stay American. I don't think it's going to be the same. She's got, at least in these first 2 episodes, she's got this very 50s, 60s. She's doing the acting style of that time period. So is everyone else.
Absolutely.
I've read in interviews that they basically went to sitcom school and just had to watch a bunch of those classic episodes from that time period to get down the style that they were going for. Well,
it's a very specific feel.
Yeah. I think acting in the early days of television was far more influenced by theater than it was by film. Everything was kind of bigger and more enunciated, and basically they were trying to project to the audience. Probably some of that had to do with what was available with recording technology of the time.
And the sound recreation technology. Speakers on TVs weren't very good either.
Right, yeah. So as the show goes on, it's going to be interesting to watch their acting style get much more naturalistic and, more with our kind of our modern sensibilities. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if she keeps her American accent or if she goes back to the Sokovian accent. Although her Sokovian accent
went on, it got mellower.
I was just about to say the same thing, is that from movie to movie, her accent shifted and drifted, weakened, however you want to look at it.
Which is totally understandable in character, because, I mean, if I'm hanging out with a whole bunch of people with a specific accent, my mannerisms are going to change a little bit.
Yeah. They say that between like Age of Ultron and Infinity War was 2 years. And then between Infinity War and Endgame was at least 5 years. So, 7 years of living in America and not hanging around. It's not like she lives in Little Sokovia. She lives in Avengers Mansion,
right,
where she's talking to only people who have an American accent, and Thor.
Right. And Vision.
True. Yeah, of course her accent is going to fade, at least
soften.
Some. Yeah, fade, soften.
Yeah.
One of many things to look forward to in future episodes is
absolutely
the change in acting style, the change in accents, all of that.
All of it. The color scheme, I mean, it is very clear from the set and costumes at the very end of episode 2. This is not how a TV show filmed today looks.
True.
And that was not just so that it would look good in black and white. There was very specific choices being made. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they develop those.
It very much looked like, the Bewitched set. And how it changed from black and white to color in between, like, I think 66 and 67 was when it first went to color.
As long as we don't get a new Vision actor.
No, that would have been this episode, because
right.
This was the Bewitched episode.
I think it would have been great if we had just had a moment of a different actor, and then next episode it was Paul Bettany again, and everything was normal and no one said anything.
Now I've seen a lot of the promos and stuff, so I know basically every TV show that they're going to homage. And funnily enough, one of the other shows that they homage also changed an actor mid-run and then changed them back, and then later used both actors interchangeably.
Would that be Roseanne?
That would be Roseanne.
Huh. Also looking forward to that. I mean, there's so many decisions that were made in creating this show that are just, they're my kind of people. This is fun.
And that was about where we wrap things up. We'll be talking about episode 3 next week, but if you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, please send in your questions and comments via email to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown or Twitter @geektownpodcast. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, come join the Patreon at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them,
Welcome to Geektown. Population, us.
Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.